Continuing on with our tutorial on how to create custom skins and liveries for cars in AMS2, I wanted to show you an additional step of creating the windscreen visor if that file exists in the template package that you download from Riza Studio's forum. I've had mixed results in the templates I've downloaded from Riza, whether or not they had a banner file included, but luckily with the BMW here we do. So we're going to open that in Photoshop and see what this looks like. Okay, we have Photoshop open and it's a fairly simple file. We only have 3 layers here. We will be using the alpha layer as well, but there's some things we need to do to make this work. The first thing we're going to do is bring over our logo that we are using on the exterior of the window and bring it into this and reverse it so that we can be using it for the inside of the windscreen. But what I want to do first is arc the logo a little bit to the shape of the windshield a little better. Failed to do that on previous tutorials, but I'm going to show you how to do that now. With that selected, we want to go to Edit, Transform, and Warp. Now you can play around with manually doing this and your mileage may vary. What I'm going to do is just use one of the presets. I'm going to go with Arc. And obviously that's way too much. I'm going to bring this down to maybe just like 6%. What you want to do is just have it so that it generally follows the arc of this wireframe border here. So that looks pretty good. Now we want to take this, copy it, and bring it over to our other Photoshop document. We can do this in a couple different ways. I'm going to take the layer, right click, and say duplicate, and then just tell it to go over to my banner file here. Now let's go see what that looks like. All right, so something is correct and something isn't. We have the logo reversed like we need it, but it's upside down. So let's edit this, transform, and flip it vertically. And we're looking better. This is good. But of course, it's going to be too big. It's getting cut off at the top and bottom. So I'm going to hold down the Alt key and drag this down to where everything fits and is not getting cut off. And check that our arc is working okay. It looks like it might be a little bit too much. So let me see if we can change that on this existing. Okay, so what happened here was it reversed it, but we can edit this, instead go to a negative arc and back up. And as you can see, we're just trying to line it up with this white wireframe line here, just so it kind of follows that contour. So I'm just editing the existing one from the design that we stole, and yeah, this looks good. Okay, step 1 is done. Okay, here comes a little bit of the confusing bit. It's about how to make some of the windscreen transparent and some of it opaque so that you cannot see through it. Now, what you might think is black means you can't see through it, but that is the opposite. What we want to have in our alpha channel is anything that we want to be see-through to be black. So that would be the outside part of this document here. This represents the entire windscreen of the car, not just the sun visor. And anything that we want to be sort of semi-see-through, like the visor itself, we want to have that part of the alpha channel be like kind of a light gray or towards white so that it's less see-through than the windshield itself. Okay, let's get started making it so that the windshield itself is see-through. Now, the document that we got gave us some things we can work with. We have this mask here. Let's hide every layer except this mask. So we need to be able to turn all of the black part into black on our alpha channel and the center part here into an alternate color. So what we're going to do is control click the mask, and that's going to select the outer part. Now hop over to our alpha channel, click down onto alpha channel 1 here. And let's fill this in with black. Okay, good. That means everything outside of the sun visor part should be 100% see-through or transparent. Okay, now with everything still selected, we want to now change the color of the visor itself. Right now, it would be white and not see-through at all, but we do want it to be somewhat see-through or somewhat transparent. So let's go to select while everything is still selected and select the inverse. Now we are looking at just changing the background or the fill color of the visor itself. So let's select from this drop down and we're going to choose our own fill color. We could have chosen 50% black or something, but let's choose something a little bit lighter than that, but not quite white. Okay, so we've got CB, CB, CB. Just a very medium kind of light gray. And say okay. There we go. So we've got a very faint light gray and black. So we should have different levels of transparency happening on each of these two sections of the visor. Okay, the next thing to do would be to export our Windscreen DDS file and test it in AMS2 just before we start playing around with the logo or anything like that. In order to find out what we need to do to get the game to recognize our Windscreen DDS, we need to open up our notepad file where all of our user override code is here for our XML. And you'll see the texture name is Windscreen. I highly recommend keeping the dist file around to open up and check out. It's got all kinds of information in it, actually. If you read through it, it kind of tells you what the names are for the textures. It tells you what size your document should be to produce the file and what compression level to use when you are saving it from Photoshop or whatever software you're using to create your DDS files. So we have our Windscreen over here. And the path to that is going to be in the same folder as the rest of our DDS files in our last to first team folder. And we can name it whatever we want. I'm just naming it M160B and .dds. Okay, so that's what we're going to export and save our work that we've started on right now to, right here. So I'm going to save this or copy it. And I'm going to go back here and I'm going to say File, Save as a copy. And we are in our last to first folder, select DDS. It's prompting us for the compression level we want. We want to change this to color plus alpha, BC3 or the equivalent to DXT5. Okay, we're here at Daytona and we've gotten into the car and we can see, yep, we have a good level of transparency to see through the majority of the windshield. And we have the visor up top has a sort of a semi-transparent look to it. So we can see the plane coming in there and we can see all the big stands here for the huge events they have here at Daytona. Okay, let's head back to Photoshop and see if we can work the logo across the front of the visor. If we go back to our layers here and turn on our Windscreen logo and make sure we have all of these channels turned on so we can see it. Here it is. Now what we need to do is do some work in the alpha channel as well to have this logo show up at a slightly different transparency level than both the visor and the full window. So let's control click this and it's giving us a selection of just that logo. Head over to our alpha channel. Let's fill this in with, let's do fully white so we can see if we can get that logo to show up completely solid in the game. Now we can actually turn this off, I think. Bear with me. And let's export our DDS, Control Alt S for save as a copy. We'll go to DDS, click on our visor, and override that. Color plus alpha, DXT5, sounds good. We're back in AMS2, and the FOV police will be all over me about this one, but what I wanted to do is back this up so that we could see the windshield from the inside of the car and see the full top sun visor. We can see that the SimLab logo is opaque. We cannot see through it because we turned that part of our alpha channel to full white, and the logo itself is appearing in white because we removed our colored SimLab logo from the front layer of our Photoshop dock. What we want to do now is introduce a little bit of a see-through red to it, so it looks red from the inside of the car, just like it does from the outside. Okay, so we're back on our alpha channel layer here. If you somehow don't still have it selected, just control-click your windscreen logo, go back over to your alpha 1 channel here, and now we can adjust the fill color of this a little bit. So instead of white, let's just do it midway and see what kind of results we get. And we'll say okay. And now you can see it's a little bit darker, so it'll be a little bit more see-through than it was previously. All right, now let's go back to our layers and let's enable our windscreen logo again. And let's try saving our DDS file to see what kind of result we get in the game. All right, back at Daytona, we are sideways in the pits here, a little bit the wrong direction. People are concerned about my driving already, but what we can see is a red tint to our SimLab logo across the windshield here. So it's got a little bit of a see-through to it. You can see the balcony there in the background of the windows off that balcony, and a little bit of red tint to that logo. Now, what we can do probably is darken the rest of the visor just a little bit, because if you remember our design, that visor was quite dark. So I'm going to try to increase the white level surrounding the logo to decrease the opacity of that part of the windshield. So let's go back into Photoshop and do that. What we want to do to make the interior windshield look a little bit more like the exterior view and make this light gray area a bit darker is to change this to black. So I'm double clicking this and I'm using layer style and color overlay to change it to black. Just select that and change that to black. Okay. Now what we also want to do is on our alpha channel is to change that part surrounding the logo to a brighter color closer to a very light gray so that this becomes a little bit more opaque and less transparent. Using the mask layer here again, I'm going to control click this, and then I'm going to select the inverse of what I've got now. So now we've just selected the inside part of the visor here. Let's go over to the alpha channel and let's fill this in just with black to start, just to wipe that out and start over. And then what we'll do is change this to quite a light gray, like almost white, so that the windscreen visor here really doesn't let much through. It's mostly opaque. And we'll hit OK. And we can see we have a very bright visor here. Now we need the logo on top. For that, we'll go back to our layers. We will control click the logo. Now we have that selected. Let's go back to our channel. And let's fill this in with a slightly darker gray color. A little bit less opaque than the rest of the visor. Perfect. So you can see we have a very light main visor part and then a darker logo here, allowing visibility, different visibility levels through these. Let's go check it out in the game. Okay, we're back in game, and as you can see, we have a really nice dark sun visor going on inside of the car with a very clear logo that is clearly tinted in red, like we see from the outside of the vehicle. So that's the combination we want. One more thing we can do, you can notice right now that the windshield is very see-through, almost like it doesn't even exist. What we can do is change the exterior background color in our Photoshop dock and adjust the alpha channel to address the level of transparency on the rest of the window. So let's go do that now. The black part around here represents the rest of the windows on the car. And what we want to do is make them a little bit less see-through. Not so much where we can't drive, but just to make it look like they exist on the car, actually. So let's double click this mask layer here. And we will use a color overlay, kind of like a fairly light gray. Okay, that's done. Now let's control click this, go over to our alpha channel, and fill this in with the same kind of color. That's fine. All right, so now we have like a less dark black around the outside of this. So this should become a little bit less transparent now in the game. Let's see what the result is. And if you can pick up the difference now, you can see that the dashboard and parts of the interior instruments are reflecting off the inside of the windscreen here in the windshield. So depending on how light you make that original black outside area of the windscreen, that's how much reflection you'll get in the window. You can make it to where it'll be so sort of dusty and not see-through that you can't drive really. So I think if you were to do this, you want to just do it very subtly, but to the point where your window doesn't look like it's not even in the car. That's the balance I try to find with that. Just wanted to show you quickly an experiment I did here, really drastically changing the color used for the rest of the windscreen file. You can see here, I just chose a, let's call it mustard yellow. And yeah, you can really add an interior tint color to your windows if you really want to. Just thought I'd show you this, but I'm going to kind of bring that back a bit to something more reasonable. So I was playing with that yellow here, but what we're going to do is just go back to what we had. And we have that light gray. And what I'm going to do here also is on the alpha channel, I'm going to control click the mask, go back to this, and I'm going to increase the darkness of this just a bit so I don't have as much reflection inside of the car. Yeah, that should be good. And now I'm pretty happy. Make sure these are all turned on when you go to test. We have all this. Go back here. We don't need the wireframe anymore for this. I'm going to just move this up to the top, Control Shift, close bracket, and we can just lock that. So what we did is we made the logo red. We then adjusted the alpha channel. Let's hide that so we can see. The alpha channel darkness for the logo, for the visor itself, and for the exterior part, which controls the transparency and reflectiveness of the rest of the windows in the car. All right, well, there we have it. There's how you can set up the interior part of the car to match your exterior livery design. I know it can be a little bit complex thinking about what is opaque and what is transparent based on dark and light and vice versa. So hopefully this helped. Just takes a bit of trial and error to test it out yourself and see what kind of results you get. Wrapping up here, thanks for watching this installment of the tutorial on how to make liveries and custom designs for the cars in AMS2. It's been pretty cool learning along the way myself as well. Hopefully the way I've demonstrated the techniques makes sense. I'm not a total expert on this, and I'm not sure exactly how all the textures are applied in some of the cases. So appreciate any tips and help from the rest of the community out there who enjoy making liveries and custom skins. I know it's a bit of a side hobby in this other hobby that we have, which is already niche, right? So, it's fun to do. And when you're not in the rig, it keeps me occupied and still doing something related to sim racing. All right. Thanks for watching and have a great rest of your day.